everyone, welcome back for part 2 of our family summer vacation. In this part, we're going to talk about what went incredibly wrong on our vacation. On day 2, we had difficulties already, and by the end of the day, we were all frustrated and exhausted and kind of upset. So here goes. So at about this point, we had about a 4-hour drive from Wilder, Kentucky to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And we had already months ago rented a cabin in the mountains, and we were super excited. That's what we were going to do. We were going to have, this super laid back vacation. And the morning of, we had yet received any information regarding the actual location of our cabin, the access code to get into the cabin or anything. And so we just started to drive. And we decided later in the day, if we still hadn't heard anyone, we would call. So we were maybe in the car for 20 minutes, a half an hour, when we got the first text message welcoming us to our cabin and letting us know that check-in is between 4 and 6 p.m., depending on the turnaround of the other people and being able to clean the cabin and everything else. And then we should have received an email with other information in it, and if we hadn't, to make sure to check our junk folder. And so we did all of that, and we didn't have any information. So we decided to just keep driving towards Gatlinburg, and when we got closer, we would then, if we still hadn't received any information, call. So we were about an hour and a half away from Gatlinburg, and we called and said, hey, we're about an hour and a half away. We didn't get any of this information. And so they apologized on the phone, and they sent us the information. So we got the information, and we had been stopped at a gas station at that time, and I tried to put the address into my GPS, and it just kept telling me that it wasn't found. So we decided to just drive to Gatlinburg using the GPS, and then once we got there, either try to put the address in because maybe we were just in a bad location, the signal wasn't working real great, or I don't know. There were also like turn-by-turn directions once you got into Pigeon Forge, I believe. However, when you're not from the area, that's kind of hard to do. And so we decided we would just drive to the area, and we would drive to Pigeon Forge, not Gatlinburg, and then try to either put the address in again or to use the turn-by-turn directions. So that's what we did. And we got to Pigeon Forge, and we tried to put in the turn-by-turn directions, or we tried to put in the address, and it still wasn't popping up with anything. So then I thought, well, maybe I'm typing in something wrong, and so I tried it one more time, and it gave us an address. And so we followed this to an address, and the place it took us was like a residential area. It wasn't a cabin. It wasn't really up in the mountains. It was kind of right there on the main strip of Pigeon Forge. So now we're at the point where we have to try to figure out the turn-by-turn directions that they'd given us, which normally isn't that big of a deal. We usually can figure it out. However, if you've never been to Pigeon Forge before, imagine being on like a 6-lane, 8-lane highway that is jam-packed full of cars. You know, you have turns this way, turn that way. Some have 2 turn lanes, some have 1 turn lane. And, you know, you can't really get over unless you know where you're going in advance. And so it's not something like you can really drive and just kind of look at the roads as they come up to figure out where you're going. So finally, we figured out what we were going to do and figuring out where we were going to go. So then we're driving and we're driving and we're driving and we're driving up the mountains, and, you know, everything is fine. Everything is going okay. We're really unsure if we're going where we're supposed to be going. But, you know, we're kind of just going with it. At this point, it had been about an hour and a half, almost. It had been about an hour and a half at the least, maybe even 2 hours that we had been looking for our cabin because we couldn't find it anywhere. We had tried calling several times to like get directions, and at one point they were going to put us through to someone different, and then our phone call got dropped, and then the further we're driving up in the mountains, we don't have service anymore, and it was just a big mess. The kids were getting crabby. We were all getting crabby. We only had a small picnic lunch that day. We were all really hungry, and so finally we got to this point where we thought, okay, maybe this is where we should be. So we turned onto a road that wasn't really labeled, but on the GPS, that's the road it said it was. So we start driving up. Now, mind you, driving in the mountains is not new for us. We have driven in the mountains before, but this road that we turned on, I kid you not, was incredibly steep. So we're driving up, and the van is having difficulties getting up this hill. And we're going up, and we're going up, and we're going up, and we're going kind of curving, and we're going up, and the van really was working really hard to get up there. And we got to this point where we get up, and then all of a sudden it's like a complete 180-degree turn out of nowhere. And once you turn to go up, that was even more of a steep climb than what we were already doing. Now, my mom came on vacation with us. She is not a fan of heights. I'm not sure why she agreed to stay in a cabin on the mountains, but I think she thought, you know, we've driven through the mountains before in Pennsylvania. We've driven through the mountains out in the Rockies. You know, it's been okay as long as we're moving and whatever. And I think she felt like just once she got to up there and she was in the car, then she would be fine. Or she was in the house, she would be fine. And so I was like, I don't want to drive all the way up there if we're not even in the right place. So we ended up kind of figuring out a way to turn around. The road was very narrow. We were honestly praying the whole time that there wasn't other cars coming while I'm trying to turn around. And we went back down and found a little pull-off and called and talked to somebody. And we were like, we really don't know where we're going. We got to this point where we were on this super steep hill. We don't want to drive up there if that's not where we're supposed to be. I said, first of all, our vehicle was having a very hard time getting up the portion that we did get up, and what we still needed to go up was super steep. And ultimately, in the end, after talking to them, and they were like, well, we sent you a video, and we're like, well, we didn't get a video. And so finally she was looking at it, and she was like, oh, she's like, yeah, that is a pretty steep climb there. And at this point, we were all pretty upset with this whole process and everything that had gone on in terms of not getting the address, being lost for over 2 hours, our vehicle really struggling to get up to where we needed to be. And my mom just said, we're not going there. We are not staying at that cabin. We are not driving up and down that road multiple times a day, which is what would have happened. She was like, I don't think that that's safe. I don't think it's good for your van to be struggling one time to go up there, let alone several more times going up there. And so ultimately, we ended up not staying at the cabin. I kind of feel like if we had maybe had room and taken my husband's Jeep, maybe we would have had an easier time getting up there. Our van isn't really that old. I think it's a 2014 maybe, so 6 years old. I guess it's older than others. But it was a struggle. So we ended up not staying in the cabin that we rented. We did end up getting almost a full refund. We had travel insurance because we had taken another vacation when we were renting a house on the beach in West Virginia, I think. And something happened and we weren't able to go on that vacation, and we ended up being out a lot of money. And so now whenever we rent things like that, we always get travel insurance. And so because we didn't use the key code to actually get into the cabin and we never actually made it there, we did get refunded all of our money for the cabin, or we're supposed to be getting refunded all of our money for the cabin, minus, I believe, $200 that we paid for the insurance. So if you're thinking of taking a trip like this or anything where you're renting a house, a cabin, always take the insurance just in case, because you never know what's going to happen. We never imagined that it would be this difficult for us to get up to the cabin or anything like that. So we then had to come up with a new game plan. And so we went to eat dinner. Everyone was in a bad mood. The kids were starving. The rest of us were just really crabby. And we went out for dinner, and it wasn't the greatest dinner experience. But like I said, I think our attitudes kind of had somewhat to do with that. And while we were eating dinner, I was on my phone, I was on my mom's phone, I was on my husband's phone, just trying to find a hotel to stay at or somewhere to stay. We had stopped at another cabin company there, and they told us that they were completely booked. They called another cabin company there. There's tons of companies that rent out cabins there. They were also completely booked. So then we're looking at hotels, and when you're traveling with 5 people, sometimes it's difficult to find a hotel room that allows you to have that 5th person in the room. And so we kind of were running into that. We were also kind of running into the problem where everything was booked for the weekend. So we actually ended up finding a hotel out in Seaverville, which is before you get to Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg. And we stayed at the Wilderness Hotel out there. They do have an indoor-outdoor water park. And we knew the kids would be excited about that. Kind of maybe a silver lining to the bad day that we had. Unfortunately, our room was pretty small, so we had to pack in 5 people and all of our stuff into a room. I did not get any video footage of our room there at all. I honestly didn't even think about it until after we had left, but we ended up staying in a room that had a queen bed with a bunk bed above. So my husband slept in that queen bed, and my stepson slept in the bunk bed above. And then there was kind of like a wall that went across to divide that queen bed and bunk situation from another queen bed and a pull-out sofa. And the pull-out sofa, I believe, was twin size, maybe. I think it was twin size. And so my mom and I ended up sleeping in the other queen bed, and our youngest ended up sleeping on the twin sofa. And I slept with my mom just so that I could be right there next to our 3-year-old in case he were to need anything at night or whenever he was falling asleep or anything like that. And it worked out fine, but we just did not have space. We were there for 6 nights, and it was really cramped. It was really packed. It wasn't what we were wanting in our vacation. So we ended up spending a lot of time outside of our hotel room, which again was not something that we had planned. We had planned on spending a lot of time at the cabin we rented. And that it didn't work out. So here's some footage that I took around the hotel. Like I said, they had indoor water park, outdoor water park, and a huge game and activity center. This is the outdoor area of the water park. As you can see, there's a lazy river there. It's not really a current-based lazy river. On the other side of those green little houses that you saw, there's a wave pool, and the waves from that pool kind of keep everything flowing in this little river. And it was too rough for our 3-year-old to ride in by himself. And so we didn't really spend much time in there. In fact, we didn't really spend any time outside, maybe 20 minutes. And then as I walk around these bigger slides, the red, yellow, green, and orange slides are slides that you go down on your stomach on a mat. And then the pink and yellow slide is a double tube slide. And then as you can see, there's that clear blue slide in the middle. And that's one of those slides that you stand and the floor drops out underneath you as you are going around. Now, on the other side of this area, I couldn't really get over there to get the greatest of view, but there is an area for smaller kids to play in. There are smaller kid water slides. There's a little baby water slide. There's little seats that babies can sit in to bounce up and down. So there is that. The water is about a foot deep over there, I believe. And we, like I said, we didn't spend a lot of time out here because when we did go out to play, it started raining very shortly after we got out there. Now, guys, I do have to say that we were not impressed at all by this indoor-outdoor water park at this hotel. We live in Wisconsin, and if you're not from here, you may not know this, but we have what is known as the largest indoor-outdoor water park in the world. So in the Wisconsin Dells, there are tons of hotels with indoor water parks, outdoor water parks, and they just have a lot more to offer. Generally, when we travel, we stay at the Great Wolf Lodge. They have a lot more to offer for younger children. They're all over the continental US. And even Great Wolf Lodges that we've stayed in other states had way more to offer than what this wilderness hotel had to offer. But here you can see the indoor water park. There's a little splash pad. There were a few indoor slides. There was this surfing thing, a wave pool, and a little baby area to play. And that was about it. So something that's not just unique to the wilderness, but a lot of indoor hotels that have the indoor-outdoor water parks is to have an arcade. We love the arcade. I think all of us, even the adults, love going down to the arcade. So this one had a pretty large arcade. There are quite a few machines that weren't working while we were here. As you can see, they also had a rock wall in the back to climb. And then they also had this really fun ropes course. We did not have time to use it. Also, there were a lot of people on it, and we were just more concerned about maybe how they could sanitize it and clean it and those types of things. But they did have this fun ropes course, and I think at the end there was a little baby zip line. And so that was something really fun. That I think is a little more unique maybe to the wilderness chain, as the wilderness in Wisconsin also has quite a large activity center like that. This hotel also had a little mini bowling thing back there. They had laser tag as well as an blacklight mini golf experience.